Peter, just so you know, your screen is someone on camera.
All right.
We are live.
Thank you, Rich.
David, just so you know, people cannot see you because we don't have a projector.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Be able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. All
Do
right.
you not want to be on camera, or do
So I could turn off my camera?
you not care?
I don't care.
If you don't care, then you're good. I know, I thought you had said previously that you didn't want to be, so I figured I'd give you the option because you're like kind of on the edge.
Kind of.
Okay,
Thank you.
let's convene. It is May 13th. This is our monthly board meeting. We can begin with the consent calendar, which consists of the minutes from our April board meeting and our annual meeting, which Celia has distributed. Our treasurer's report, which Ethan distributed, and the BAIP report, which Celia also distributed.
I'd like to add something. I did not distribute the annual minutes.
Oh, you only sent that to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I've seen them. So let's,
I could send them out. I could send them out later this week.
I don't mind sending them out because I took the 3 documents you sent me and I created one out of parts 1 and 2 and responded to the questions in part 3, one of them anyway. So I can distribute the annual meeting minutes and we can vote on accepting or changing those at another point.
Okay, thank you very much.
So for tonight, it's just the April board meeting minutes, which why do I call you Cynthia? Celia has distributed. Any changes or comments or questions about any of those 3 documents? Somebody like to move they be accepted as distributed.
Move to accept as distributed.
Anybody opposed? Right, consent calendar approved. Rich on the Zoom, is Ginger logged in or no?
Nope.
Okay.
Just us, and I'm gonna turn on the leave and join sound so we can hear people join.
Okay. I am adding 2 items to the agenda. One is old business, one is new business. Under old business, we should spend a minute on spring planting, the recap. And under new business, today there was an email chain about illegal parking on the Riverside Drive Service Road. And I hope we'll have time to address that. If not, we'll make it a priority for the June meeting. Let's see how we do. David Carroll is on the Zoom, prepared to address us about the topic of our tax status and whether it's feasible to change from being a 501c4 to a 501c3. So David, why don't you take the floor and
Sure.
tell us what.
I think, thanks. I'm sorry, I've been missing a few meetings. Yeah, I've been trying to figure a way around it because it seems like we were in a bit of a catch-22 since it was formed in 1971 as an A-type nonprofit, and they changed the laws in 2019 to say that that couldn't be a charity, and we didn't have charitable purpose explicitly in the charter. To get it's sort of sort of where New York law and federal tax law intersect. The federal tax law says, well, you have to have a charitable purpose and be a charity, quote unquote. So New York State says, well, you can't be a charity if you're type A corporation, and if you and you can't change to change it, you could amend your charter, but you have to get approval to amend a nonprofit corporation's charter. You have to get approved by the Attorney General's office, and they said as a matter of policy they don't want to approve those things. So what I wanted to suggest was, and we talked a little bit about it last time, was maybe forming a new entity that's a charity and merging it with the current entity. But I think a better way would be to form a new entity with charitable purpose and have the current entity, our regular block association, would be the only member of the new nonprofit entity. So it'd be like a subsidiary of the block association. And then have a slightly different name, and I think it probably need another bank account. And then we apply to have this new entity, which has the right purposes in its charter, apply to the IRS to have it be a 501c3. And then when we're trying to get donations, we'd say, they should make them to this affiliate, block association, I don't know, Charity Inc. or whatever we're going to call it. And that would maybe get around this obstacle I think we're under, which is we can't change the purpose because New York State won't approve it, and we can't get 501c3 because we don't have the right purpose. So that's what I'd like to suggest that I look into further, and maybe write this up in a little bit of a memo to send to people, kind of outlining what the steps would be.
It sounds fabulous.
Well, I hope it'll work.
It's a working solution.
I did find some research, some commentators saying, "Oh yes," and they changed the law in 2019. The old law was a nonprofit corporation, unless it was a charity, which doesn't have to have quote unquote members, had to have more than 3 members. But they changed it in 2019 to say a nonprofit corporation can be the only member of another nonprofit corporation. So the way it would work would be the current block association, the 50C4, would be the only member of the new 50C3. And a lot of charitable entities do this. Lots of museums have separate entities that are set up as foundations to collect donations or to manage their assets. Even I've been reading in all the press and everything, Columbia University has a separate corporation, Columbia Investment, that holds the endowment and invests it, and Columbia University is the only member of that corporation. So people have been doing this. So I'm hoping that would be what I'd like to propose. So sorry it takes so long to figure this out. I kept trying to get around the couldn't amend it situation. So the idea would be to, as I say, form a new entity with a similar name, get that one to get 5 with the right purposes in its charter. We still got to get it approved by the Attorney General, but I see other block associations have gotten approval as charities and 501c3s. And way back when, some people sent me some examples of that. And then once that's formed, then the current association would be the member. And then when we're soliciting, we want to solicit donations for, that could be tax deductible to the donor. And I think this whole thing arose because I think someone mentioned a foundation wanted to make a donation, but they could only make it if we were 501c3, so they couldn't do it. So then we'd have, well, you can make it to our subsidiary, which is 501c3. And we'd have to be clear, we'd have to keep, pretty good records that any money that went to the new entity was used for charitable purposes only. You couldn't, push it up to the other entity and stuff like that. But I think that could be managed. And we'd have to keep records like that even if we were 501c3. If the entity could become a 501c3, but you have to keep pretty careful records of what you do with the money you get. So that's what I'd like to propose, writing up a little more formal proposal to send to everybody.
I think that would be very helpful.
Okay.
To also see either a list of what the charitable purpose is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that would be part of it. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. I would look at what other block associations have gotten approved and kind of glom off of that. So I'm trying to get copies of their charters. You have to order them and it takes a little while. But yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. But yeah, that would be part of what I would propose is here's some samples of what we could use that we know has gotten approved by the IRS.
Here, we could try asking the other block associations for their charters.
I can get them online. It just takes a couple days.
Okay,
And
so a
Yeah.
question,
They're public documents,
Also, if
you know. pardon
provided you with our annual financial report, you could take a look at the expenditures,
Oh, that'd be helpful, yeah.
weigh
I-
in, and make sure they
Has
qualify.
I've seen, you guys put something in the newsletter, usually I guess later in the year. So I have the ones from the prior years from the newsletters. Has
Okay.
2024 been put out yet?
Yes,
Yeah.
it just was made public at the annual meeting in
Oh, okay, so I
April,
didn't see that.
and it will be published in July.
Oh, okay. Well, if you don't mind, if it's available, if you don't mind emailing it to me, that would say, I can start working on that too.
Ethan, do you have that, or should I email Gary?
I can find it or email Gary.
Okay,
You have my email address, right?
just send it to
Yeah.
David.
Yeah, David Carroll 865.
David, the question I have is, so we'd be having two entities, one's
Yeah.
a 501c3, one's a 501c4.
Yeah.
That have two different bank accounts.
Well, you have to show that you're keeping the assets separate, and that would be the way to do that.
Right. So do you know what the rules are about what money can be transferred from one to the other? And I assume it's one way is okay and the other way is not.
I think that's right. Yeah, I'm going to look into that, but I think you'd have to be careful that you weren't having the 501c3 kind of dividend money up to the 501c4, and the
But
IRS.
it's okay to go the other way.
Yeah, we could make a contribution. Yeah, definitely the parents that put money into the 501c3.
And so,
And they wouldn't care. The IRS wouldn't care because you don't pay. It isn't like, oh, I can't let you do that because you're going to take a tax deduction for the contribution because the Mohawk Association is already 501c4 and doesn't pay tax.
so the 501c4 money is in some ways more valuable because it's not restricted to charitable use.
That's right. That's right.
So if we ever wanted to go back to having a security guard or doing some things that don't fall within
Right.
charitable mandate, we could use the
I think
504 money.
I think that's right. I think maybe you brought that up at an earlier meeting, and I was trying to think about how we could get around that, and then I thought, I was looking what other companies were doing. So yeah, I think that would be the way to do that and make clear, money, people contribute money to the 50c4 like they do now. They can't deduct that on their tax return. I don't think, given that it's very hard to deduct charitable donations anymore since they changed the law. I don't know that that's ever, it seems to me the only issue with the reason it came up as an issue was you mentioned the foundation did want to give up money only to a 501c3. I don't know how much people care anymore, but unless you're very rich, you can't deduct the donations anyway. Unless you itemize your deductions, which most people don't do.
What types of expenses are not charitable? Just the guard or just an employee? Are there others that would be?
Well, sometimes, it depends. It depends on if you're doing fundraising things, and they could be charitable, but the money that got raised had to go to the charitable purpose, So one thing maybe would be have the 501c4 run the thing, and then if they made any profit, they could donate it to the 501c3. As I understand it, the main reason to have a 501c3 was to get to be able to accept donations from, other foundations or charities who can only make donations to a 501c3.
Well, yes, that was
Yeah,
one issue, and another issue was the deductibility so that people who are donating to the Block Association can.
Yes, that's right. But to be honest, that is kind of a moot point anymore because when the tax law was changed in 2017, unless you itemize your deductions, which most people do not. I read just recently there was a big article complaining about the big tax breaks, the big charity contributions. They really only go to someone who's has very big income and would itemize their deductions.
Okay,
But
that was raised in the discussion, and also came across Block associations that were 501c3s who did have security guards, and the Columbus Amsterdam bid, which is a 501c3, also has employed security guards and things like that.
So it might be okay. I'll look into it some more. But the real reason I'm suggesting a separate entity wasn't so much as the guard, but because we just can't turn this current one
Right.
into a 501c3 because the state won't let us amend the charter and the IRS won't give it to you unless the charter says something different.
Understood.
It's great that you were able to identify
Thank you.
a workaround.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if it works. It sounds like it should work in theory. I don't know how, I formed nonprofits in the past when I did some pro bono stuff when I was still before I retired, and usually the state attorney general approves things pretty easily. But I don't know. I don't know if they think it's people are. I don't know. I don't know how much work it is to get them to approve it. But I'll start looking into all that. And like I said, I'll write a summary of this with an example of some charitable purposes we could consider.
So I'm just spitballing here, but if we need a new name, maybe the West 103-102 Block Association.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, the other way around. That's a good idea.
Stand us on our head.
Good thinking. I was wondering about that.
Logo.
We'd have to come up with some different and if that'd be good because it's a name no one else has probably taken yet. If we just said West Side Neighbors or something, it's probably been taken. So I hope. Sorry that's taken so long, but I hope
That's great. Thank you so
helpful
much.
suggestion. And so, as I said, I'll start before the next meeting, which is June, right? I'll have a memo put together to send to the board members before that.
Well, thank you, David.
Okay, with that I will start. I'm gonna.
Question for our board members, you might have an opinion as well. Does it pay to put in the newsletter? We're considering doing this for the purpose of making member contributions tax deductible. Do you as a resident care about that?
I'd like to suggest not doing that till I've gotten a little further on whether we could do it, and I wouldn't want the IRS saying, "Aha, you're trying to be cute" or something, which I know we're not. But I'd like to wait until we got a little further down the road, if you don't mind.
Okay,
So I just did a search, and if this is right,
Yes,
says that the standard deduction for single people is 15,000, for married filed jointly is 30,000.
that's right.
Married filed separately is 15 each, head of household is 22.5.
That's right.
And if you're calculating potential itemized deductions, it includes charitable contributions, SALT, so state and local taxes, mortgage interest, and other eligible deductions.
Well,
So-
salt is capped at 10,000. So
Right.
if you live in New York, it's pretty hard. I just did my taxes, and I can attest. It's pretty hard to get to get a higher amount than the standard deduction, unless you have unless you have mortgage expense, interest, which I don't happen to have, or
Yeah,
if
I
you have,
wonder
if
how
you
many
have very
people have
bad,
enough
if you have
mortgage
very bad
expense.
medical bills. But there was just an op-ed in the New York Times where they were saying that very small amount of people itemized deductions. They were complaining that the tax exemption for charitable donations was really just a benefit to rich people and the organizations who solicit rich people, since most normal people, most people, unless they're very wealthy, don't have enough itemized things to deduct. I mean, in the old days, lots more people itemized their deductions because they could deduct the full amount of state and local tax.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I just saw in the news there's a big fight going on that some New York State congressmen are saying, "Oh, the standard the flat amount for state and local tax should be 120,000, not 10,000," and it's been proposed to be raised to 30,000. So, but that's still, I think it still means that, and I don't know how much impact it had on charity, that more people don't itemize their deductions. In the old days, and people who didn't itemize their deductions anyway didn't get a deduction for charity. And in 2020 and 21, it was having an impact. And because of COVID, they amended the tax law for 2 years, saying you could deduct charitable donations only up to $300, even if you didn't itemize your other deductions. They were trying to increase charity in 20 and 21 and during the pandemic, but that went away after 21. So, but I could mention, I'd rather not say we're doing it until we get further along that it's good. and not have the IRS saying, "Oh, you were doing this, you know, to get around our limits or something like that."
Yeah,
I do
I
too.
don't know if a
I'll
survey
check
would
this.
work, but
I'll check
I'd
the article.
imagine that just with the cost of real estate being so expensive, people who have a mortgage um, could be up there.
Well, they deduct the interest on the mortgage. They can't deduct, so I don't know how
Right.
much, I don't know how much that is. But, I was gonna check to see here, just out of curiosity. See what artificial intelligence tells us. I just don't think it's as big as big an incentive to charitable deductions as it used to be. Let's see here. Says now only 9% of taxpayers itemize their deductions. Before the law was changed in 2017, 30%.
But
I,
is that
I,
nationwide?
yes, yeah, that's for the whole country.
Yeah, I imagine our block is vastly different than
The nation.
the nation. That's about
Well,
just because apartments are so expensive.
well, again, if they have interest to deduct, if they have more, co-op with a mortgage or something. But it's a good thing to look into. I'd just rather not say we're definitely doing it till I had a little more clarity.
It might pay to do it even if there is a small percentage of people who would benefit, if it makes it so that we can receive a corporate
Oh yeah, I think absolutely. Yeah,
donation.
I thought that was more the impetus that you couldn't get something that someone wanted to only do it to a 501c3. And like
Right.
lots of other charities can't donate money except another 501c3. So if their foundations, want to do that stuff and all
There's no downside to doing it, but
that.
there could
I
be a
don't think so.
downside to
No,
not doing it.
other than you have to have two bank accounts and keep a little more record.
All right, thank you,
Okay.
David.
Alrighty, I'll be sending something out before the next meeting.
Great.
All right, thanks. I'm going to take off. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure, my pleasure.
Making a note to send David an updated board list so that Deborah, you're included. Okay, moving right along, liability insurance. I've provided a neighbor of mine who said he was willing to look into the various quotes and information we've already gotten. I forwarded him a ton of emails. He has not yet had time to do anything about that, but is still willing to do something about it as time elapses.
What is that covered?
We don't have any liability insurance, for the board. What's it called, directors and officers? It occurs to us that we ought to. So we've been looking into finding a carrier and a decent rate for what we need. Find it out to a neighbor of mine who's in banking who said he wouldn't mind doing it. All right, annual meeting recap. It was a great meeting, I thought.
That's really great.
Yeah, well done in leading it. And
And we
And
didn't
we
need a
didn't-
timer after all.
yeah, we didn't have, right.
It was great to hear from my friend. I haven't heard him before.
Mhm.
And then your recap of all the things that have happened over the year it showed a lot.
Yeah, it seems like we're spinning our wheels so often on things, but no, we actually got some good stuff done.
And sentiment was,
It's exciting.
I was pleased, and I was glad that we had a 50-year resident to include. I think only maybe once in all the years since we started doing it, which was, I think, 2012. We didn't have somebody. I was sort of kind of hoping that we wouldn't have someone this year because I was very tight on time and when would I interview this person, blah, blah, blah. But she came forward, and in fact, she had identified herself to me last year.
Yeah.
And the place where I had looked for my notes to find who that was eluded me. So I was glad that she tracked me down and reminded me. There was somebody else on that list once I did find my notes, so I have to circle back to, because he could have been included, but I missed him. So,
She was a hoot.
yes. Rich, I CC'd you on that note that I sent to her where I referenced the question that you had wanted to ask.
I don't think so.
Meant to.
If you did, I missed it.
Okay, I had indicated to her that somebody wondered if she'd ever had a chance to sing at a block association annual meeting. So yeah, I wish that all of our annual meetings are as successful. I was satisfied with the attendance. I wouldn't mind it if it was more. It wasn't a packed room, but it was a good crowd. And as I said at the meeting, I was glad to see so many people who I recognized, and even gladder to see people who I didn't recognize. Amy has the sign-in sheets and will be making sure that everybody who signed in is included on our email list. And then we'll pass it to me so I can see whether there are any other people who signed when they moved in who we should identify for 50-year next year.
How many members or like official members are there of the Bond Association?
When we redrafted our bylaws recently, we clarified the distinction between residents, anybody who lives within the boundaries, and members in good standing. Members in good standing being defined as anybody who has made a financial contribution or an in-kind contribution of time, effort, participation of some sort or another. And based on our general estimated calculations, that's about 300 people. Both the donors and the helpers. It's too soon to start thinking about next year, but if anybody finds themselves with an idea for what we should speak next year, as soon as you have that idea, make sure to spread it around.
I have a question for Hetty. Hetty, do you still want to have meetings with the co-op boards to talk about what their membership and involvement in the block association could do for them?
I think that's still a very viable thing for us to work toward.
Valuable?
Viable, valuable, both.
Okay, okay, I just put that out there as things to look forward to.
Mhm. Agree. It had been discussed previously that maybe when we make some forward progress on the security survey, that would be a sort of natural collection point for the co-op boards and the landlords and those folks to gather in one place at one time. We could use that as the topic to launch that kind of initiative. After annual meeting recap, I have a slash and then it says election of officers. We at our meeting following the annual meeting elect our officers. I have indicated that I need to step down as chair, that I am overwhelmed and maxed out. I put that in an email not too long ago, and the silence was deafening of who is raising his or her hand to serve as chair instead. Peter suggested to me that perhaps a few months more time might make a difference in that. It occurs to me that staying on as chair so that I can help with the oversight of the longest table, our new event that we're launching in June. We usually do our July meeting via Zoom, but July meeting with the expectation that at our September meeting, somebody else will be stepping up. Comments, thoughts? Am I wrong? Is that somebody willing to step up as chair and I'm just not aware? I know you're overloaded with your new position and school and all. because Gary and Amy are not here, I feel like we don't have our full. And Mary and Ginger, no, we're missing 4 important voices. So I don't mind tabling this. What do we do?
Tabling it is a good idea. But this is not-
Kick the can down the road.
But, yeah, I also will not be able to attend the September meeting. I'll be in Europe, very different time zone.
And Rich, you said June is tough. for
Yeah, I
you,
remembered what my June conflict is,
And Celia, you have a June conflict.
but I could do a different day in June if we want to reschedule, but. I don't know if we want to play that game,
Yeah,
What's the plan?
like the 9th would work great for me, but
say again.
the day before, Monday, the 9th would work great. I just have something else on the 10th.
So I need input.
I could make the 9th. I can make the 10th, but I wouldn't be able to attend until 8.
Yeah, my event on the 10th supposedly is 6 to 8 at Hudson Yards. So I could possibly dial in at 8 if it doesn't go long. On the topic of chair, I mean, I think a lot of us are just overwhelmed. I was thinking you've been doing a fabulous job, but totally understand you're overwhelmed. What parts of it are the time-consuming parts? And is there a way of splitting it or some creative solution that
I've been
could?
thinking about that. Too many meetings in addition to the monthly meetings. I've been
Which are
sitting
what?
in on the Bloomingdale Bites meeting. We've been doing the longest table meetings. I answer not a lot of emails, but some emails from the info at email address. I'm still very involved with newsletter.
Is there a world where you could remain as chair but offload a lot of them?
I'm open to that. I wouldn't remain as chair indefinitely. I'm making a hard stop September, whether somebody's stepping up or not. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, listening to your list, I think there are some of those things that you could offload.
but Amy has stepped up and done more of the newsletter heavy lifting
Mhm.
since I became chair, which is great. None of it in itself is burdensome. When you put it all together, I'm just finding myself spending way too much time in front of the computer dealing with block association stuff. I wanted to get the bylaws done, we got them. But for instance, as chair, I need to keep an eye on what's happening with David and the tax stuff. I'm keeping an eye on my neighbor who's looking into liability. It's just so many different topics. And I keep expecting in my life to have fewer things to pay attention to, and it's just not going that way. Why don't we?
I would be happy to help with the offloading of some things, newsletter or otherwise. I don't feel equipped to run. I feel way too new. I don't,
I agree.
I'm still
I'm
decoding.
sure you could, but I think it's good to get up to speed
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
industry and how things go.
But happy to help with some of the offloading.
And some of the meetings, like you probably don't need to attend all the longest.
Right,
Yeah.
Amy's been starting to go to the Bloomingdale Bites. She and I have been taking turns. When
Right,
she can't, I do, and vice versa.
right. So of those, of the nonprofit, for example, maybe Ethan and Gary could jointly split that responsibility.
And then just
And just just logistically things of that nature. Maybe like, is there a lot of lot of queries that come through the info.
Not a lot, but the ones that come, I answer thoughtfully, and that takes a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that,
Doing the agenda, coming up with it,
right.
circulating it, making sure Caitlin gets it to post at the website. It takes a little.
No, I know there is.
And I know we've discussed, hiring somebody administrative. But unless that person really were up to speed, it's hard to keep all the different threads.
Right. And then. I keep forgetting her name, I'm sorry, the woman who was helping us with the yard sale, and that was,
Eliza,
no, not Eliza, but Eliza.
Sharia,
Oh, sure.
Yes. Would she, for example, be able to handle some of the info?
We're
things,
hoping to
or
look
at
for
least-
in this table, but Shorty is, I don't know her well, and I don't know what her work is, but I know that her work commitments sometimes make her, really unavailable, so that we will email her and it takes follow-up, and she's just not able to
Right,
respond or fulfill commitments. She was great when we would have her attention,
right.
but it was a little sporadic.
Well, could we rotate who's responding to the info email, or does it have to be someone who's like consistent and more on top of things than,
I think depending on what the question is, it could get
Yeah,
sent to
This-
somebody else.
this is, yeah, I mean, the other problem, you have so much institutional knowledge that that there are very few things that you don't know the answer to. Whereas,
But it's
others-
different to weigh in and give somebody else the knowledge than it is to feel responsible for the remembering and the paying attention and the being available and answering something in a timely fashion, which I have trouble with. The next table. Let's talk about it in June. Let's find out whether June 9th is feasible.
so I have an event.
Okay.
I'm doing Monday, June 9th.
Okay. So that's bad for you.
or the 11th, but
I could do the 11th.
again, it shouldn't be about me.
It shouldn't, but because you're the one who's
Yeah,
in charge of the recording and such. Ideally, we do this when you're available. 17.
that would work for me.
That works for me too.
seventeenth is good for me,
All right, I'm gonna send an email to the entire board so that those who are not present to weigh in can.
Third also could work for me. Yeah,
Why am I doing that earlier?
Because we have the event at the end of the month,
Yeah.
having a little more advance
Oh,
seems
okay.
like it would be a good thing. Celia, how about you?
the third is okay.
All right, so I'm saying I'm changing the date to the 3rd and emailing the board,
maybe with the 17th as a backup.
okay? About availability. Bylaws revisions. We added two words to the most recent one that we had ratified or accepted, or whatever the proper terminology is. We added aging as one of the things that we do in our neighborhood, and we added approximately in terms of the advance of when the agenda gets posted at the website. Can we vote to accept those revisions? I move that we accept a new
Second,
version of the bylaws effective as of today with those two changes. Rich seconds. Anybody opposed? All right, done. Longest table.
Okay, so I am still trying to get a permit with Karen. She got pushed back that they said we need a temporary food something, which it doesn't. So I found the example from what we've done on West 21st Street to give her to go back, and I'm just staying on her to get one. You know, I just lean on her every day to see how we're doing. I haven't heard. The concern I have is she seems confident that we'll get it. But can we start promoting it before we have that? I don't.
I think we proceed as if we're going to get it. And hope that we'll know by the time we publish the newsletter. And if we don't, we'll have to decide that.
Okay, because in the meantime, I do want to reach out for volunteers and get that going. And I'm imagining I do that via email as an email, which I sent you a draft of, you and Kathleen on her. I'll have to get that out this week. So to get the idea out there and see if we can get people engaged. In terms of dollars, I love the idea of leveraging people. Again, through Erin, trying to get to the Blue Cross one, and she was going to reach out, and I just have to stay on her to find out more.
Well, your correction, Hustling International, it's no longer the youth hustle, even though we all call it the youth hustle.
Oh, thank you.
Hustling International. Yeah,
Thank you. My hope is that we get 30 tables. I don't know if that's crazy, if that's realistic, if that's possible, if we can augment, we find out how many are available, assuming they're available. So that is the big cost, right? So when I put together a small budget, which is literally tables, chairs, tablecloths, a little bit of a manpower, and a permit, and then 1 day insurance, which is why I asked, we don't have insurance as a lock association, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so I think it's a 1 day insurance, which in my experience is $200 for a day. The permit has been $25 for the day, so I think those are not too costly, but I think we can come in under $1,000 for all the things, if we can get tables and chairs that we just need to pay people to move.
yes, I would give yourself a little bit more cushion, especially for staffing, if you needed,
Okay.
people. I think if you could do, if it comes in under 1,000, great, but I would give yourself 2,500. Most of the events that we have done on the street, by the time we're done with it all, come into about that.
Oh, okay. That's great.
2,500, if we have a lot of performers or things like that, then it's more.
When you say we, you mean
Park to park, when we've done things. But in terms of the scope of just things that wind up costing money that you don't even.
Okay, fair, thank you.
Because also, yeah, even, duplication, laminating, putting in posters, all those things cost money. Few hundred, you can easily spend a few $100 and
okay.
posters around.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So in 2,500, for the Halloween parade, it was what, 5,000, was that what budget?
2,000,
2,000.
1,800, I think it was.
Okay. So I think this is certainly comparable in complexity.
We need it. We need it.
Less, something less.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if we can't get the tables from Hustling International, do you know how much it would cost to rent them?
I do. It's about $2,000. That's the difference. So when I budgeted out, it's like 3,300 versus like 1,300 if you get t-shirts for volunteers. But
It's, Daniel and I were discussing this a little bit in terms of the permitting, and building in on that, went that street road today, and we don't know how many tables the Marseille, but they're finding out,
and they have rectangular,
yes,
fantastic. And chairs.
they have tables and chairs. Exactly how many do we need?
Look at the 30,
And how many do they seat?
10 each. So I'm thinking.
Which block are we looking at doing? Broadway to West End?
Broadway to West End, 130.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there will become the alternate side parking, getting people to move, but, you gave me hopes that that's doable.
Yeah, yeah. We have a lot of experience.
What date are we targeting?
Sorry,
What-
June 26th, the Thursday evening.
Okay.
So Thursday from 6 to 8 PM, it'll be very light out. It's the last day of public school by chance. And we just thought before people are really going away for weekends, but still the Thursday night, do you have something?
Yeah, my wife's office party that I have to go to.
Can you come to
Bring the party.
Yeah.
Bring it off.
What hours are we looking at then?
6 to 8.
6 to 9.
Oh,
Oh, well,
okay.
Send the girls.
Yeah.
Tell them to invite their friends, take a table.
I have a question. What if it rains?
That is an excellent question. If we want to do a rain date, we have not planned one. We can, especially if we're not renting the tables, that's the big difference. But it is troubling for a permit. They don't usually give you a rain date, so. we
you have to do 2 permits.
Yeah.
I do an event for work in Brooklyn Bridge Park and you just pay $50.
Okay,
Just to get a second permit.
okay, so if we wanted a second date. Do people have opinions on
Every other day that week works.
that?
Actually, the 24th is election day. So I think we
Oh.
wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
25th,
Well, it has to be after, because then it would have rained.
or unless you make the call.
Unless the 26th is the rain date for something. But we would have to first put a permit process in motion. For that date,
Oh, geez, okay.
Friday night.
Okay, are people in town? Yeah, I think Friday night. I would do Friday night as the plan B.
That's, I mean, it's getting to the,
It's when people are starting to head out of town.
yeah, people head out of town. It's also like the start of July 4th week.
Oh, for sure, yeah. You said elections are 24, we could do, well, that's a question for Aaron, we could do 25 and 26 as a rain date.
That'd be great for May.
Well,
But
20, you mean move the primary date to
The 25th.
to the 25th, with the rain date of the 26th.
they're not going to change the primary for us. It's on the 24th.
That's for sure.
When you said primary, that's the date for the permit. We're not talking about voting.
He's talking about voting.
No,
Sorry,
he's
Tuesday,
saying
you
the
said the word primary.
the number
Ah,
one
you
date.
said the
I
word
was
primary.
joking about,
You both used the word primary, though.
yeah. He means primary date for the longest table being Wednesday. The primary voting
Yes.
date is Tuesday.
Tuesday.
What do you guys feel about that? Is it important to have a rain date?
I'm also asking because are you interested in having any tents? Suppose it's a light shower and people want to stay out. Is that even practical to think about having like a canopy or a
But I
tent?
think it would greatly add to the cost. The
Unless-
tables alone are 2,000.
True.
Setting up a tent would
Well, I'm
be,
hoping tables are zero. They're the cost of labor.
I'm just saying like relative, I'd imagine that setting up a tent would be a lot more expensive than tables. There probably aren't as many vendors and it's an ordeal to set up a big tent for 300 people,
Okay.
especially lengthwise, because tents are gonna be 40 by 60 or whatever. dimensions, so. I mean, maybe you could have 2 rows of tables.
I think that complicates things. the
Yeah.
intent. I like the idea, but it's complicating.
We like 2 dates, main date and a rain date, and that's it.
I think 25 and 26.
Um,
Or what are you thinking?
I was thinking about whether the following week is a bad choice because the 4th is on the Friday. Does that render that whole week just not a good choice?
I think that makes that a hard week.
Yeah, I think a Wednesday could even be better than a Thursday anyway. As we're getting closer to when people are gonna be getting out of town,
That's true.
the day's slightly longer.
So the big
There
question
definitely
will be,
All right, so let me go back on that. The permit.
are you imagining, you said t-shirts for helpers, are you imagining something specifically longest table t-shirt or just like a block association t-shirt?
Either one. I actually have that question. Is there such a thing from other events where you have block association t-shirts?
We have had them in the past. We don't currently have them. We've been talking about that. We should have something that we can sell and we could certainly make t-shirts and supply the volunteers with them
I
and
think-
also sell them.
I love that. I just think it's super helpful for volunteers to have them on. I
Right.
know who to ask questions. It can be block association and they'll be used, can be used for other events. That's fine too. Doesn't need to be as long as people branded.
If we want to take the risk, we could make longest table branded shirts to sell at the event. If we think people would buy them. If we're making t-shirts anyway, and then the staff ones could be either a different color or just say staff on the back. I have no idea whether people buy longest table t-shirts.
I don't know where, I've never seen them sold.
For staff, what a good thing is just have something front or and back, which is identifiable, so that. See them coming and going.
Yep, and a bright color.
Yeah.
I will send you the contact info for the guy we've used for merchandise in the past.
Awesome. All right, so yeah, I think it's following up on permit and tables and then something to market.
I've had good luck with buying t-shirts from Custom Ink.
Custom ink.
And they have designers who help with designs,
Great, thank you.
and they're quick and
Quality's good.
yeah, they're just a good vendor.
Thank you.
Do you have the logo already?
Yep.
So, and, Make Music New York is the preceding Saturday on the
That's
21st, so
fabulous.
we can really promote the longest table at all of, there are 5 locations for Make Music New York.
Okay, I don't know what those locations are.
So so it's all being done with Columbus Avenue bid.
Mhm.
And there's one, there are actually 3 on 103rd Street, both sides of Broadway and Amsterdam. Are the 3 of them, and then up near the bid is another one, and then 97th Street in Columbus is another. So, they're all available for.
Say, let's do the 103rd Street ones, so
Right.
that for our first launch, we're sticking with the immediate neighborhood.
Yeah,
We'll find if you want them.
I know we talked this, but how does this work if we have 300 seats? Are we selling them? And
Sorry, an Eventbrite. Actually, I wanted to ask for your help perhaps.
yeah,
Amy said that you've done that in the past. It's literally setting up an Eventbrite to get people hold a spot. So we'll sell free
Okay.
tickets.
and so it's free tickets on Eventbrite. And then people are just how do we handle seat assignments?
So the way that we do it is we organize it via table captains. We ask for volunteers, which is
Mhm.
a table captain. They're a host for a table. And then either they bring people or we give them people. But they come early to the event. We have table numbers on the tables. And it's a little bit of a free for all. We leave a few tables empty because that's for the individuals that somebody will host.
Mhm.
But everybody just puts their stuff down on a table. So the table captains claim a spot, if that makes sense.
And then it's all potluck, bring your own food.
All bring your own food.
And so each table shares among the 10 people. Like, do you bring enough for 10?
Yes. Yeah, you organize with your table captain, or if you're a single person,
You just have your own.
you bring your own.
It accommodates both possibilities.
And when you've done this in the past, is it easy to get 300 people? Is it like a marketing effort?
It surprised us how much we got. It is a little bit of a, so Brooklyn Heights is doing one this coming weekend. And they sold out in 4 days.
And is it open beyond the block? You don't have to be a block resident.
That's right, that's right. Not that formal, it's just meant to be, or, organizing a little chaos.
And what percent show up of people who RSVP?
Well, that's why the table captain is actually super helpful, because if if Peter's coming and he's organized 10 people, the chances of them coming is very high. If it's just an Eventbrite, one person, we've seen like 60% of those
Yeah.
show up. So you can't count on those per se. So you put a number of tickets on Eventbrite at a max, and then you sort of have to manage. So when we have sold out in the past, like Brooklyn Heights did, or like we've done on Chelsea, then it allows us to, on the Eventbrite where it says sold out, it's still open to the public. We just can't promise a chair.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So you want to make sure everyone feels like they can still come. They may sit on a stoop or ask them to bring a chair, like a pop-up. Yeah, it's not a perfect size.
No, it's great. And then does the table captain reach out to the people at their table in
Yes.
advance to coordinate meals?
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
So you're organizing a picnic is basically the point.
So you're
And
basically at 30 people organizing a picnic.
And it becomes everybody's event effectively, with a little bit of extra,
Was it hard to get 30 captains?
I don't know. It hasn't been. We'll
Yeah.
see. I feel like you guys have events, you have an organization,
Mhm.
this sort of, I think but we'll know. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? We'll know before the day of if this is gonna be.
Right, we may not have 30 captains with groups, we may have 10 captains with groups and 10 known tables that are going to be, a group of 2 or a group of 4, something smaller than a whole table worth.
And is an objective like for people to meet neighbors, or is it for people to, like, for each of us to invite 9 other people and have a table of friends seems like it's not achieving the goal of meeting neighbors?
It's actually just a really low entry point of meeting other people. So you come
Yeah.
with a base of familiarity. You sort of connected in, and you might invite people from the block, you might invite people at your wife's office, whatever. It
Yeah,
may be people from elsewhere, but it's a starting point and then it just spills over because it's not so formal, right? So you meet people up and down next to you, you get up and walk around. So it's lovely in how it just sort of starts to grow your group and you see familiar faces.
and how do you incorporate elected officials and or any neighborhood notables in terms of just using them as a way of both spreading the word and potentially making it, bringing people in?
Well, we don't want to make it political, but they are all too happy to come to
Yeah.
their constituents sitting down at a table eating.
Yep.
That's a magnet for them. I talked to Mark Levine at some other event and he says, I want to be there. Like, so if you make them aware of it, there's a good chance they'll stop in. And media could also stop in as well. That becomes a day of
Right.
situation that if they send somebody out or not, but. And invariably you have an influencer or somebody in there who's sort of, hosts it and then that gets the word out as well.
That's great. Thank you for bringing this in.
It's very simple and low key, and so, and I think we'll get a feel for it as we go through the process. So I'm not pretending it's perfect, and it's sort of, it's magical, because at the end of the day, everybody wants it to work. And so there's sort of a, you know, the table captains, you use them as mini hosts. And so you get on a Zoom call a week out, it's like, okay, any questions? What are you guys thinking? And they share ideas. And our ask of them is simply host your table, but just be a host. Just, you see somebody walking around lost, just give them a chair. Like, so that's, it just sort of sets a tone.
One more question. Does anyone know the legality of putting Weber charcoal grills out on the street?
I think that's a no-no in Manhattan.
We're not allowed to have
But
them
what
on
a
our
great-
terraces.
Terraces, no, I think backyards, as long as it's 10 feet from
Oh, really?
structure, I believe is okay.
What we're hoping to do food wise, it also changes the permit if you're cooking food at the event.
Yeah.
What we're hoping to do with Daniel's cooperation and legwork is hook up with a handful of neighborhood restaurants so that people who are attending, let's say they don't want to bring their own food,
Yeah,
they can make an arrangement with this restaurant, perhaps discounted, perhaps they'll just all be delivered all at once, something like that, so that they're all there. We're promoting the partnership with the restaurants as well.
Right.
Instead of, you know, I remember being in the park when some Salon Carmines or the pizza guy would show up trying to deliver pizza to a birthday party on the lawn, and, you know, to avoid that kind of crazy with a whole lot of different restaurant deliveries all at once, they could be
Yeah.
pulled into a handful of
Mhm.
featured sponsors. All right, anything else you need to know from us?
No, any more questions or?
I have questions. So the hosts have to live on 102nd or 103rd Street?
Not
They could-
necessarily.
So if we talk about this with the people on 104th Street and their organization,
We have
they can, and what about BAIP?
the information will go to BAIP and they can publicize it through their list if they care to. 104th Street can as well. 104th Street did not want to be involved in the organization of it.
Mhm. But how do they approach?
They
Oh.
RSVP, they say, we'd like to take a table. We'll, you know,
Yeah,
this is our table captain.
yeah, I would love to reach out to them and say, is there somebody who wants to organize from your area, if it's a building or your association, and let them tell us how many people they have.
They would RSVP to the Eventbrite, the same as anybody else.
So, for example, I'll get an email message about it, and then I click on the message and I'll be connected to Eventbrite.
Yeah,
and I imagine on Eventbrite, we'd say if you want to be a host, please
yeah,
email.
there will be two links. One will be to Eventbrite to, RSVP, put your name and a number, and then there'll be an email, which Amy is gonna help me with the generic one, like, table host at 102nd, 103rd. And we'll get that email and I'll contact them directly.
We could also have in the Eventbrite an optional, do you want to be a table host?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and we could say like,
I do want to interact
Yeah.
with the table host,
Yeah.
so I want a little bit more than Eventbrite.
So, I guess the other thing we should just talk about are the listing of community partners like International, Wish Fish if they're providing tables, Park to Park if we're using youth ambassadors to help the bid, of course. Are there any other Purple Circle maybe, and the Japanese school? I don't know, they can lot to fit on posters and stuff, but you can kind of do it, and they might, I think they would be BAIP, of course, another one. But I think just we should probably start to make a list of community partners, right? Who would,
Might even ask the precinct.
that's a
Oh,
really good idea.
excellent.
That's
point.
why I said it.
Well done, Richard. Yeah,
Excellent. Well, yes, I would do precinct, firehouse, EMT.
the
whatever.
community, the community, and the 24th precinct community council.
Okay.
Actually,
We also have a community affairs
Community,
officer whose info I can get.
Okay, thank you.
But take a picture of this.
How about that?
Very.
How about
If we were to promote it
the
in,
halfway house?
yeah.
Yeah.
If we were to promote it in the rag, we'd get a lot of people to sign up.
Yeah, I don't think we want to go that big on our maiden voyage.
Yeah, well, I think we probably want to do concentric circles and do our email list of members, giving them first crack. And then go to partners and just see how many RSVPs we get.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we're needing more, like elected officials all have email lists, that would get a lot of people.
Tables. See tables here. That's another potential source, and tables and chairs.
I don't know if they have long
Yeah.
and or folding.
Yeah, I don't know if they do either, but I bet some co-op supers might have some. Well, instead of, we could start making a list of the next couple of weeks.
That's fantastic.
I've got a long folding.
All right.
Right, I've got
This
two.
one.
Yeah,
Chairs,
that's fine.
chairs are more than issue.
Right. It may make it very complicated to be picking up two from here and two from
Yeah.
there and one from here. And what about the chairs? And
Yeah, that's, like our youth ambassadors were, we've had to take lug chairs from one place to another. That's a lot of what they've wound up doing is tables and chairs and getting them to where they came from back and forth.
ideally, if Hostling International has them to share,
Yeah,
then the labor, instead of spanning out to a lot of locations and back, does
Yes.
the chain back and forth to the one.
how about plates and cutlery?
Bring your own people back.
I'll bring it.
Oh,
I have,
oh, go
okay.
ahead. Go ahead.
I have 4 massive cardboard boxes in my bedroom right now because my wife was on the planning committee for the Bronx Science Gala. And somehow she ordered plates and cutlery and got stuff that we don't need, so it's waiting to be shipped. So if that were helpful, we could just,
It's
Have it,
helpful
not
to
ship
have
it
a
back.
box, some
But-
supplies.
yeah, I don't. It might be complicated because we have to figure out what it is and if it's appropriate, and also like what she paid for it,
Oh,
because she's supposed to get a credit.
I don't know if we have leftover from Bloomingdale Bites. Amy might know that because she had been ordering sustainable, eco-friendly, some kind of particular, so we weren't just doing lots of plastic. Okay, check with Amy.
I have a question. What if the youth ambassadors or some of their friends are thinking about becoming a host? Is that allowed? Are they old enough to do that? Or would their attention be so divided that it wouldn't make sense? Is that something we could ask Sedalia about? Who's the person who
Sure,
is their
we can ask, I
advisor?
suspect, I suspect. So if Sedalia were free, for example, she would be a great host. Also, she's great to have at she's the mentor for the youth ambassadors, and she's at MS 421. One of the local public magnet schools. But the youth ambassadors are usually like running around a lot, making sure that, you know, chairs and tables and other things, so. In terms of somebody who would be like host sitting at a table or arranging, I think you'd kind of want somebody else
Mhm.
there. But,
I love the idea of them being involved. In other words, it should feel very intergenerational. And once the tables are set up, they could host and then they start the ball rolling of, you know, breaking it down.
but we should get, Sedalia involved early so that she can line up the people, and there are some new people too. In fact, we have some excellent, new youth ambassadors who are like super responsible and good workers. You met some of them, actually.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Would it make sense to do a half hour, an hour long Zoom? Just for the people in the community who are curious and who might want to get involved and might want to be hosts or,
Absolutely, yeah. So,
Well, who can set up the Zoom? Would you set it
yeah,
up?
it's easy.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a great point. So in other words, it's the ask for volunteers and then set up a couple calls of the same.
Yep.
For people to explain it and take questions. And then, especially for the table captains and or the volunteers, something close in to the date.
Yeah. Yeah, I think once we have the 30 people, we want to
Mhm.
have regular meetings but just to spread word and get people who might be curious to
Yeah,
just find out more.
that's a great idea.
I have another question. What about people from the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group? Would they be good people to contact? They're older and they're kind of intellectual. They may not be so enthusiastic about cooking. But I'm just mentioning.
There's no requirement that anybody cook anything. You could do the whole thing by buying prepared food, ordering from a restaurant. People get to choose how they want to do that themselves. And I think making them aware of it so they could send it out to their membership was a great idea.
That's a really good idea. So I think, I mean, this first outreach will be the email that Amy will help send. And then
And then brought.
can I just put it in under door? Like, how do I get to tenant associations or group heads? Is that via that email? Or is there another way to like physically like hand a flyer to each building?
We have a system for a flyer for each building,
Okay,
which I will send you information.
okay, perfect. Here we go.
It sounds like step one is just getting a permit.
Yes, yes. Permit, time and date and permit, and then tables and chairs, the marketing.
We still have a whole bunch of agenda items. Deborah, continue to sing out if you have questions, need help.
Thank you.
Spring planting recap, let's give that just a couple of minutes. I was not physically present. Anybody else?
I was present. Oh,
You
you were
were
there too.
I saw you there.
I too.
Yeah, I was there.
Okay, looks like it was very
Great.
successful.
We beat the rain just in time.
Was it Saturday? Was it Sunday?
It was Sunday.
It was Sunday. For instance, Peter, you asked what about the emails? When the publicity went out about the spring planting event, I got an email from someone who does volunteer from time to time to help us on things. Oh, it's always been Saturday in the past. Why is it on a Sunday? Sunday I go to church. Shouldn't there be a time for reflection? And it deserved an answer.
Yeah.
I wrote an answer. I feel like I finessed the answer very well because I said, oh, I'm so sorry that you can't make it on Sunday. I'm sure if you get in touch with the organizer, she could provide you with plans so you can do it at your convenience. Agree, reflection is a good thing, but especially when you're planning something for an entire neighborhood and some of the neighborhood doesn't want it on Saturday and some of the neighborhood doesn't want it on Sunday, it's always very hard to schedule something that pleases everybody. So what we do is we let the organizer of the event choose what works for him or her. And I got a very nice response. point taken. I was only thinking about me. You raise a good point, blah, blah, blah. And I think for our community, answering stuff in that way,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's good.
and it takes,
That's a good answer.
A little
It can-
time, a
it
little
can-
attention.
It can,
Yeah.
so that, right.
I might add that I saw a message that Hetty sent to someone about a matter we were concerned about. It was very thoughtfully, I read it several times. I learned from it.
Okay.
So thank you very much. It was the message you sent out today.
Ah.
Also, I want you to know, I spoke to my minister. I said, I'm going to attend service on Zoom because I have volunteer work to do. So I'll be leaving early. And he was okay with that. He liked to hear about it. He liked hearing about it.
agree it was successful.
I thought so.
Neighborhood
I don't
looks
have
good.
discussion.
He exhausted the plant supply.
Good.
They're in the ground and they're doing well.
And we got rain.
And we got rain. And today and tomorrow and the day after and the day after that.
Eliza has already submitted a recap for the newsletter. All good. I'm gonna skip Shared Street just for the moment
Sure.
and knock out a couple of quick ones. Newsletter update. Amy and I are working on it. If you owe us copy, now's the time. We're going to put all the pieces together in the next couple of weeks, and we're aiming for early June distribution so that we can publicize the longest table event, Dead Center.
You want pictures for that?
I don't know. I'll talk about it with Amy. And Ariana, the designer, will have an opinion. Regarding the newsletter, I've started drafting an email, which I didn't have enough time to finish to send out as I had hoped to, like late last week over the weekend. If we can pull the pieces together, which I hope we will, I would like to include some sort of article in the newsletter, letting the residents know that we are looking to find out how the neighborhood feels about the shared street. Now that the construction is done, now that the granite blocks are back in their original planned positions. It will be very carefully limited so that we're not getting tirades. We are asking for concrete, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Peter, once I draft this thing, I'm going to want your input because of what you mentioned about the things that are influenceable and the ones that are not, and the ones that are
Mhm.
important from a security standpoint. As I said before we publish anything, I want everybody's input on that, and I will send it to you with enough time so that you can weigh in. It's not an article that I think any one of us can independently write. And
Right,
be on the lookout.
right.
And in the email that I've been drafting, I also explain my rationale for why I think we need to do it now, in the summer issue.
Okay,
Obviously,
We'll see
it's
that.
a very charged issue that
Correct.
has to be done delicately.
Correct.
well, the other complicating factor is, like, I wish I knew or had more of a definitive sense of, what the fate of the whole open street, shared streets program is going to be over the next year. No one really knows, and there is a lot of, that they're even getting a response from DOT on the simplest questions often takes months now, whereas, in the past it would take weeks. So it's very it's really hard to even say concrete definitive things without looking like you're completely misrepresenting the situation, because there's so many things that are up in the air. So,
And we can mention that.
yeah,
I think it's important in the crafting of this article to make it clear that it's important that we hear from all camps. Because our purpose is not just to hear from the loudest, our purpose is to hear from as many residents as we possibly can. And make it known to them that numbers count. And even if their email says, I don't care, or their email says, I love it the way it is, don't touch it, or their email says, I hate everything about it, I'd rather have the parking spots, we need the numbers. We don't want to
yeah,
make any decisions based on
you know, and
action.
events like even the longest table might be, just that I think if you ask a few questions. About how people feel about the use of this reading. It could be very, very insightful. But there are a lot of, you know, the surveys always obviously select the data from the people who respond. And, you know, there's an outreach aspect too. If you go out into the street and you talk to people who are actually sitting on the granite blocks, taking a break, reading a book or whatever, you might get a very different response. And are those people, they're not necessarily readers of the newsletter, you know, just as the Parkway, probably the heaviest residents of the Marseille, but there are very rarely people who are residents who attend and
And encourage them to
they're
respond.
important members of that. It's almost, you almost need to do some outreach as well.
Sure.
Just put something, you want a real sense of how it's functioning.
It also, if there's a link, I imagine that groups on all sides are gonna share the link and encourage everyone possible to either give a great review or a horrible review. So I know when we put it in the newsletter a few years ago, you had to have a newsletter and it was numbered. We want to do something like that, or how do we want to?
We want to
Screen
ask,
people.
what building do you live in? And, you know, ensure that the people who were polling are residents, because that's who the block association represents.
So we have to be thoughtful in how we do that.
Correct.
And like, do we just, didn't we in the last newsletter give out unique codes?
When we did the survey on a separate sheet and all that, yes, we did
Yeah.
that. Okay, you'll see this all in an email. We can fine tune it via email. I'm mindful of time.
No wonder you want an assistant.
If you only knew. Rich, you went to the cabinet update. Anything to report?
It was torture.
Okay.
It
Is there anything relevant?
was grown adults talking for an hour about in great detail about minutia.
Then let's not spend our
Yeah.
time on it.
Thank you for joining.
Peter, talk to us about, in brief, shared street love, and any news on the security survey.
Yes, street love's going great. The shared street, as we are all aware, we passed this resolution endorsing Sammy's law, 10 mile per hour enforcement enforceable speed limit for the street as opposed to the advisory 5 mile per hour sign. I did bring that to DOT, and they said 103rd Street is on the, it's planned to be a 10 mile per hour legally posted 10 mile per hour speed limit. Camera enforcement may require a speed study. It's possible that it's eligible because there are schools on the street, but it's complicated. And it's gone into another process at DOT. When we might actually hear back from them is unknown. The other thing that has been mentioned, and this gets to my point before, it's very hard to know what will actually be done, but the intent is that there will be remilling and repaving of the street in the fall, but there's no written communication to that. It's an aspiration expressed by people at DOT. So we're hoping that the street will be repaved, which it badly needs, and that the pavement color to indicate that the street has a different use will also be changed. Whether or not that will happen, or they will have budget, materials, whatever to do that, we don't know at this point. But the street will look very different because there'll be no more of the asphalt art unless that's created afterwards. There'll be two-tone epoxy gravel paint put on the street surface. So that's what's been expressed to me by people, and when I say people, it's been Gary, Rich, myself, Daniel, and Michael from the bid, who have been accompanying DOT when they've said these things to me. So that's kind of it on that.
Is there any word on what blocks would be included in a 10 mile per hour zone, and whether it might include West Hampton
No,
Riverside?
yeah, that's an interesting question. I brought it up, and they're aware of it, but whether or not, it's unknown what they
Is there
are.
any more that could be done to advocate for that?
Well, I don't want to take too much
Yeah.
time because I'll fill you in on that later, but perhaps, maybe you have some ideas as well.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Ed's gone, but just direct outreach to Ed.
So he's the Manhattan, Ed Pinkar was the Manhattan Borough Commissioner who left to head up the Fifth Avenue bid about a month ago, and right now that position is vacant, as are many at DOT right now. So that's one of many complications. And there are significant staff shortages in almost every department of DOT now, just vacancies that are just open. So that's a confounding problem. On the security survey, there's about a 4-week delay, maybe more than that, because the primary person who was working on that, who was Wilbert, who thankfully he did finally get his DACA recertification, but he's waiting for a work permit, and they can't do any work until he gets that. And it's something which in the past has taken a matter of days, and he's now been taking for 3 weeks. So as soon as he gets that, he will resume work on that. But he did get his DACA recertification. So, but there's a delay on his ability to work on that until he gets that.
Can we reach out to Margaret Forgione? You know her,
Yes, yes, she is aware of the speech. She's on the.
but see if she might weigh in, like help out with the block.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
And there's another person too. I'll introduce.
Under new business, I have the return of Bloomingdale Bites. That's been scheduled for Thursday, October 9th. This year. The next meeting for the planning is on Friday at 4. Amy will attend via Zoom. Anybody else who's interested in participating is welcome.
What day is that? I'm sorry. The
23rd, which is Friday.
this month?
Yes, May 23rd.
Sorry, when's the event itself, October
9th,
Thursday?
Thursday, October 9th. And Boston International has agreed to that date.
What time of day is that?
Evening, 6, I think we did the last time. Because we are already past 9, and 9 is when we're supposed to be out of here. Rich, we're gonna table illegal parking for our June meeting, date to be determined, maybe the 3rd, maybe the 17th. We'll be devoting some considerable time to longest table details. And then we will be on the verge of the newsletter. Oh, I've ordered envelopes because we were out. So Ethan, one of these days there'll be a bill for that.
Okay.
Who writes the checks? Is that Gary?
Gary.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a
suggestions?
question. Anything about Ray's successor? Have you
I
heard?
have not heard anything.
Okay, that answers my question.
I don't mind asking on the way out if the guy at the desk is still there. I've been told his name so many times, it's embarrassing that I don't know. I've endeavored to find out and
So just 20 seconds back to the community board meeting this morning. 2 things I raised. One is the open air drug market on Amsterdam and 103rd Street. And said, like, we've raised this with the precinct, but extra help could be great because the precinct's not taking it seriously enough. And the second is less our block, but the tennis courts at 96th Street. They're finally making the repair of the part of the greenway that's caving into the river. That had been blocked off, condensing cyclists and pedestrians and tennis players right in one area. Unfortunately, they're rerouting bicycles up and around, and the path, they create a temporary path directly in front of the place where tennis players mill about. And I worry that bikes, especially coming down the hill, might conflict with tennis players coming off the courts. And I just raised that as an imminent safety issue. Less our block, but still.
you raised it at the meeting this morning.
Yeah,
So there is actually, has been 24th precinct activity on that site by 868, and it's greatly improved as of this week. They're
yeah,
regular patrols, and the times that I've been there this week, it was not in evidence at all. So
Great.
whatever they're doing.
I went to Arco on Saturday and there was a lot of activity, and finally the precinct did show up, but
Okay. Yeah, but it does seem to be getting a lot of, some
Yeah.
attention. Like,
Is it just a deli right there? Corner?
the deli and across the street.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, suggestions, new business, old business? Somebody like to move to adjourn?